All right, students, welcome to Government and your first set of virtual notes. Make sure that you have your Unit 1 note packet with you, and you'll be filling out the Lesson 1 um, notes that say virtual notes as we go. If at any point you need to, you can always pause this video and then just go back to catch up on some of those things. I'll be moving on fairly quickly with not a lot of pause time just because this is a video. All right, make sure you complete this before next class period so that you have everything ready to go for class. All right. So our goal today is we're going to talk about sovereignty, power, authority, and legitimacy. It's going to be a lot of terms starting out today. It's kind of where we've got to begin. All right. So what are some of those terms? Firstly, what is government? Government is the institution through which a nation makes and enforces public policy. Government is the functioning. It's the group of people who are making decisions about things. Well, what is public policy? Okay, that's another really important term that you probably haven't maybe heard of it before, but not quite sure. That's public policy. Really is the ways that government provides for its people. Okay, it's the things that government does that help people in some way. That's the decisions that are made for government. There are tons of examples of this. There's infrastructure, welfare programs, social security, your police and fire departments, even your military in some ways are examples of public policy. That's why I have on the right-hand side here our state flower, right? The construction barrels, it's our state flower because it comes out every single spring. By the time fall runs away, it starts to go away, right? That's a joke. You're supposed to laugh at that. Hope you did. Anyway, but road construction is a great example of public policy, okay? Because when it comes to roads, there's no incentive for any one individual or any one business really to create a road. It's just too expensive, and they're not going to profit off of it very well. Yet at the same time, you can't deny that we all need roads. We all use roads in our modern society. So who's going to provide that particular good? Well, the government's going to pay for it, right? And we fund those roads through our taxes. Okay? When we tend to think of government, though, we tend to more think about politics, right? And politics is the struggle over who gets what, when, where, how, all those types of things. It's the arguing, it's the debating, it's the dividing things up. Because even though government has a lot of resources, right? Our federal government budget this past year was a lot of money, right? Over $4 trillion worth. But even that is still a limited resource in some way. That money has to be divided up somehow. How does that money get divided up? All right. So in like our road construction example, what roads get fixed and what ones don't? Uh, that's kind of the politics, right? Is it the most in need of roads that get fixed? Is it the most used roads that get fixed that maybe are in okay condition, but they get used more than this road that's in bad condition, that's very overused? Like, that's where the politics start to come into a lot of times with funding. Okay, so those are some important terms to know. But really, for the part of the virtual lesson here, we're going to start getting into why government works. Not how, but why. Why do people listen to government? Why do you obey some laws and maybe not obey others? Right? Why is it that government works? Okay? And that comes to three of those terms that we talked about right at the start: power, authority, and legitimacy. I like to call these the DNA of government because every single government has these types of things. Okay? So, power. Power is the ability to influence the behavior of others. Okay? It's the ability to influence the behavior of others. It's getting somebody to do something that on their own, if they're left to a choice, they wouldn't do. Right? If you are watching this video right now, I have power over you. You know why? Because I can almost bet that you would not be watching this video if I didn't require it. Right? I'm getting you to do something that you would not normally do on your own. There's a lot of ways that we can do this. You can do it through force, through where you're forcing somebody to do something, right? Through persuasion. I can try to maybe debate you and use logic and reasoning to force you. Maybe I can use a rewards-based system. If you have a job, right? You may not like your job so much, but you keep doing your job. Why do you keep doing your job? Well, you get paid. That's a rewards-based system. Okay. When it comes to power, I like to think of speed limits a lot of times, right? Speed limits are a great example of power. Uh, if you knew, right? So here's an example. If you knew that you had this little section of speed of the road that a speed limit of, let's say, like 55 or 55 miles an hour, okay? But there were never any cops on this road. Like, cops just don't go here, okay? What's really the speed limit? It can be whatever you want. Okay? That's an example of power is you drive the speed limit because you're afraid of the consequences of not doing that, right? That is maybe, coercion done through a persuasion or a rewards-based system. You're rewarded by not getting a ticket for driving the speed limit. Okay? So that's power, the ability to influence the behavior of others, getting somebody to do something that they would not be willing to do on their own. Right? Next up is authority. Authority is the legal ability to use power. So, not all examples of power, not all influences of behavior are illegal. Right? If you got a mob boss and they're trying to like get you to do something, that's not going to be a legal ability. That's going to be an illegal use of power. And there's a number, like in class, we're going to come up with some examples of maybe some situations where you don't have the authority to use power, but you're doing it anyway. Okay? So, is this something that is allowed by the law? Has the government allowed this use of power to be used? And lastly, it comes to legitimacy. Okay? Legitimacy is the acceptance of the authority of those in charge. When it got like a lot of times when we think of government, this is going to be related to, are the people doing what government says? If the government passes a law, right? They pass a law that says you cannot wear, Ohio State sweatshirts because it's the worst state ever. Okay, great idea for a law. If everybody in the United States is following that law, well, that's a legitimate law because it's being accepted, right? But if everybody starts to go up in arms, which I don't know why they would, it's it's after that school down south. If everybody starts to go against that, then that is not going to be legitimate. Is that particular rule accepted? Okay? So those are three terms that are going to be really important to know. Power, the ability to influence the behavior of other people. Authority is the legal ability to use it. Can they do that legally? And legitimacy is that those decisions, are they accepted by the people that are being governed? Okay, so some important terms there. So let me show you an example that you might be a little bit more familiar. Let's look at the classroom here. Power in the classroom. Take just real quick, pause the video here after I ask this, and think to yourself and come up with an answer. In my classroom, okay? In my classroom, who has the power? Go ahead and pause it and think about that for a second. If you said it was Mr. Schmude, if you said it was me, you'd be right. All right, I am the one who has power in the classroom. I'm the one who's making the decisions about like what kind of homework we're going to be getting and what we're going to be doing in class. Right? I have guiding things that I have to do. I have to follow the state standards and such like that as to what I teach. Okay? But I'm ultimately kind of the one who has the power in the classroom. Okay? Who or what authorizes that power? Take a minute, pause the video, and think about that. Who or what authorizes the power that I have in the classroom? There's a lot of different things. Okay, the school board does. The school board is they were one that hired me to teach here at Coopersville, and as a result of that, they're the ones saying, "Yep, Mr. Schmude, you have the ability to go ahead and teach government in your classroom." My contract with the district gives me the authority to do that. Your student handbook, right? There are a number of different things that authorize the power in my classroom. Okay? Let's look at the last one. What is it that makes my power in the classroom legitimate? Pause the video, go ahead and think about that. There's a lot of different ways, okay? It's approved by the people. You're watching this video, okay? That's kind of showing that my power is legitimate in and of itself. You go to class, you sit in the class, you do the activities that I set forth and things like that, and I designed to try and help you learn. All of those things are going to be examples of it being legitimate for just on your sense. The fact that you go to school, that your parents send you to school, that is an example of that power being legitimate, right? that the taxpayers are paying part of the property taxes and their state taxes, and that money then goes to the school, and they're accepting of that, not trying to fight that in some way. Okay, all of those are examples of how my power in the classroom is legitimate. All right, so that's an example of how power, authority, and legitimate kind of look in maybe a situation where you're a little bit more familiar with. Okay, almost done here. We've got a couple of things to look at yet. How did government come about? Right, where did government come from? Did it just magically appear? Right, where does government get its basis for power? Right? These are four of the different theories about where nations came from and where government came from. Okay, and you're going to want to know these. We'll go through them one by one here. The first one over here on the left is force theory. Okay, in force theory, that's where somebody came in and said, "This is how it's going to be." Right? I am going to use force. A lot of times this is connected with the military. A lot of times we like to think of this as a dictatorship, right? So good old Kim Jong-un over in North Korea. When force theory, they have an individual or a small group that's claiming control over a particular territory, claiming control over an area, and forcing the population to submit. You are going to do what I say, or you're going to be killed. In North Korea, you are going to have a picture of Kim Jong-un in your house. This is an actual thing. You have to have a picture of Kim Jong-un in your house. And if your house catches on fire, and that is not the first thing out of there, that's right, before your kids, before your pets, okay, before anything else, if that picture isn't the first thing out, the military is going to come get you. And you might just disappear and never be seen from again. Okay, that's an example of force theory. The military is in control, and they are the ones who are allowing that particular individual or that particular group to maintain control. Okay, next up is divine right of kings theory. Okay, divine right of kings theory, and this goes back to really medieval Europe. You probably remember this a little bit from some of your world history classes last year or 2 years ago, depending on when you took world history. Okay? In the divine right of kings theory, it basically says, look, God created everything. God created the state, and God put particular individuals in those places to rule those countries. Okay? God ordained the kings to rule. And you're going to listen to the king, because by listening to the king, you're obeying God. Right? And if you're obeying God, good things happen. But if you disobey the king, if you go against what the king is saying, then you're disobeying God, and as a result, you're going to be sent to hell. Okay? Really, what happens is the divine right of kings theory uses religion to try and control its population. Right? It uses religion as its source of authority, right? As the source as to what is making all of these things legal, to get its population to listen to the decisions that the kings are making. Right? That doesn't mean that the king's decisions always match up with the religious beliefs. A lot of times they go against it, but that's the idea behind it. Is the king has been given the authority by God to rule, and that's why you listen to it. Okay? There's another one that's kind of with the development of like Charles Darwin and some of the ideas around evolution, came about evolutionary theory. Okay? And in evolutionary theory, that's where you kind of had the situation where where government just kind of naturally evolved over time. You had a situation where, okay, you have a group of people that are living together, maybe at a cave somewhere off in the middle of nowhere, back when you're still like hunter-gatherers and such. And they start to settle down, and you start to realize, you know what, you need somebody in charge to kind of help direct everything. Like, these people need to be hunters, these people need to be food gatherers, maybe we're going to have these people be farmers, right? And you start to have somebody who's making decisions for a small community, right? Or you can even have this element even in a family, right? Maybe say it's just a family, right? Somebody's in charge at home, right? One of your parents or your guardians is in charge. All right, at my home, I'm the one who's in charge. I'm the one who makes all the decisions. My wife even told me I could do that, okay, and say that. That's another joke. If you didn't get it. But anyway, you have one person who's in charge, right? They're the ones who are kind of making the decisions. Then evolutionary theory says as those families get together, they appoint one other person, and you get like maybe a small community. Then you get even more small communities get together, and you start to have like a town or a village. Well, they appoint someone or maybe a group of people to be in charge, right? And as you just get bigger and bigger and bigger, you have, in a sense, government. Somebody is making decisions for the community as a whole. Okay? That's the idea behind evolutionary theory. Okay? Where government just kind of naturally evolved out of the family structure. And lastly, the one we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about this a ton, because this is what the foundation of our government, right, is social contract theory. Social contract theory. And in social contract theory, you have this situation where the people and the government basically kind of like sit down, they create a contract that says, government, you can do this, 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 and this. In exchange, we'll give up these freedoms. That's right, I said give up freedoms. And as we get into the Enlightenment, you'll understand a little bit more what that means. Okay, but this is where a population gives up some of their ability to make decisions, some of their power to a government in order to promote the well-being of that society as a whole. All right, protection is usually a pretty big idea in social contract theory. All right, so last two terms for today. You have sovereignty and popular sovereignty. Right, sovereignty is related around this idea of independence. Right, it is the ability of a state to have absolute power within its territory, and it's making its own decisions when it comes to foreign policy and domestic policy. Foreign policy is like decisions with other countries, okay, things that are going on in the rest of the world, where domestic policies are things that are happening within its boundaries, right, within that country's boundaries. Okay, so when it comes to sovereignty, there's no higher authority. Nobody else is telling that country or that group of people what to do. They are the ultimate authority, right? Independence. Okay? Really, really important term to get. Popular sovereignty, okay, is related to that. All right, but popular sovereignty is this idea that the people are the ultimate authority, and this is a major part of social contract theory. Okay, popular sovereignty is that the people give the government power and elect representatives to make decisions on their behalf. Okay, and that is how we govern. That is how we maintain control. But if we don't like what government is doing, we find other people to represent us who are going to do what we actually want. Right? And that's one of the major ideas behind popular sovereignty is that the people are the ultimate authority. Okay? All right. I hope that have you a lot of these terms and ideas made sense. If you have questions, don't be hesitant to ask me to kind of explain a little bit further in class. But that's everything I've got for you today for this virtual lesson. All right. So I'll see you in class soon.